Hey all, Big Cheetah here, and I'm so happy to finally share with you the interview with the amazing and successful voiceover artists Mark Atchison and Greg Berg during our live panel at GrandComicFestV. Grab a bowl of popcorn and enjoy the show. So, my name's Dylan. I'm a producer of podcasts After the Credits. I have a bit of a background in FM radio. Media studies was what I went to for college, and then also more so for fun than for, pocket cash. I do voiceover for like hold music. So in the group chat for the GrandComicFestV, they asked if anyone would be interested. I waited politely for like 5 seconds, and then I said, I'd like to do it. It's an honor to sit at the same table with two successful, people of the industry. So I'll let both of you talk. Maybe Mark go first, and then we'll go our right to left, your left to right, and say what you want to say.
Well, I've been an actor for about 45 years, but only got into the voice side of it in the last 20. Started off on stage and then went into film and television, and then caught the animation bug after that, doing smaller parts in G.I. Joe and Christmas cartoons and things like that. And then 1999, I landed my first a starring role in a series called Fat Dog Mendoza. But I'm most known for is Lord Tyrek in My Little Pony, and Unicron and Crumple Zone in Transformers, and Fisto in He-Man, and Scopes and Alienators, and Slider and Barbie and the Magic Castle. Those are my main credits, but I've done a number of other cartoon series as well. And always enjoyed the cartoon work quite a bit, because you didn't have to show up at set at 5 in the morning. You could wear your jeans, and you could do an episode in the morning and then have lunch and do an episode in the afternoon. And it was always a lot of fun. And it's been a great treat to do it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. What, Greg?
Well, I don't know if anybody ever heard of me before, but they have heard my voice in many different places when I started in the business about 40 years ago professionally. So even though we have the younger people here, maybe you've caught younger cartoons, but along the way I have been the voice of many different characters in animation. My first cartoon was called Robot Man and Friends, and it was based on a comic strip that they said, let's turn this into a cartoon show. And it was a pilot. And it's about a little cute robot that it seems to be a lot of the work I do is cute voices. And this robot would be energized when people loved each other. So throughout the whole cartoon, it would go on with the situation, and then he'd lose his energy when they didn't, and so the whole idea was to get him to be up and perky again. So that's where it all started for me, with a pilot. And then from there, that was in the early 80s, a show came along called Muppet Babies, where they made a show off of a little sketch within the Muppets Take Manhattan movie. And in the movie, they had the Muppets dreaming about when they were little. And it was only a couple minutes long, but it got a lot of attention, and people felt like, hey, they should turn it into a show. So they started looking for the voice talents to do it. They could have used the originals, but they were all tied up doing work in New York. The show was being done in Los Angeles, so I was a Los Angeles-based actor there. I started actually in comedy character acting work. and I wanted to be in shows where they had different characters pop in and out that you saw. And about that same time, when I was all ready to have a lot of fun doing those kind of shows, a lot of them were canceled, and they didn't have those type of shows anymore where they needed that. It became more brainy, like a Murphy Brown or Cheers or something like that. So you didn't have that many characters in there that were silly, and that's probably how I got involved with Muppet Babies, being Fozzie Bear, the bear that tells the jokes, waka waka waka. And little Scooter, they said, yeah, you got to do Scooter. So I said, okay, Big Scooter's like this, and he's always in the Muppet Show going, Miss Piggy, you're on in 5 minutes. So I said, what would he sound like as a kid? So I kind of like tightened the voice a bit and this, and then they made him work on a computer to help write Fozzie's jokes or create some new adventure for them during the day. So basically, yeah, I was bright-eyed, and there I was working on the computer, the smart guy and all that kind of stuff, and a little bit whiny too, but that didn't make him stick out as one of the main characters. So those were the two characters there. Within, as the show developed, they sometimes animated the babies as the original cartoons. It was a test called Muppet Babies and Monsters, where they had live animated versions of the Muppets older. So since I was matching Frank Oz's voice, who did the main characters, if one of his characters popped up in the live older version, then they used me to do that. As life went on, I started finding out I could do sound-alike voices, because with the Muppet Babies, we were doing the voices for the babies based on people characters people already knew. So I said, well, let me play with some voices and see what else I can match. And since I was able to do it well, I was hired for different movies to do voices of people that people would know, but when they needed to re-record them, if a plane was going by in the scene or whatever, they're not going to call the guy back and say, do that one line again. So they'd hire somebody like me, which is called automatic voice replacement or dialogue replacement, ADR. And they bring somebody like me in and say, could you sound like this guy doing this? We think you're in his range, so just figure out how this is a little lesson in doing voiceovers, how the speech pattern, the tone, and the acting that's involved with the characters. So I got a job doing that for various movies, which, and again, I'm just talking about the early part of my career. And these days, I still get brought in. A more current movie that you might have seen a few years ago was called The Other Guys. I don't know if you've heard of that movie with Will Ferrell and Marky Mark, Mark Wahlberg. And I was a voice that people heard, but they never said who it was. In the movie, what happens is Mark Wahlberg shoots Derek Jeter accidentally, as Mark was a cop. So he had to go back to gun training class. And so he was telling everybody in the class how serious handling guns are or whatever. And then in the back of the room, you heard a voice go, "You should have shot A-Rod." And that was just a test when they were putting that movie together. They just said, we needed a voice in the back of the room, we'll try it. Well, they tried it, and they showed it at a lot of different previews, and people just laughed when they heard that. And so they left it in the movie, and so you'll hear me in that movie doing that line, but you wouldn't know that it was me because they didn't give us name credit in that. But that's someplace you might have heard me. I've done other voices in other movies, doubling actors. So that's kind of like what I'm doing when it comes to voices.
Great, thank you.
I've got 30 more years to talk about, but that's why I don't want to turn it. But I'm just showing you, if you're here to hear about voices, that's some of the work that voice people get involved with.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. To kind of expand onto that, I mean, I'm sure with a I don't want to say imitating or impersonating, but I mean, and then the middle ground being kind of developing the voice of an already established character, making him younger, and then on the way other end of the spectrum, creating a character. I mean, how do both of you find that character's voice? How much is the director a part of that? I mean, how much is just you in a room by yourself just playing around and being silly?
Well, I know when I auditioned for My Little Pony, Lord Tyrek starts out as a very wizened, small, old man. And I remember the first couple lines, is he friend or is he foe? The pony wonders. I can assure you I am no friend. And he starts to suck all the magic out of the ponies, one by one. And he becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until he's this giant Pegasus. Princess Twilight, you have fouled me for the last time. And so those two ends of the spectrum were developed from the cells, the pictures that they had in the audition room. And so I looked at the old wizened guy, and then I looked at the giant Pegasus, and I realized that I had to create a lot of distance between these two characters to make that arc happen. And it was a lot of fun. I had a great time with that, and I did that for 6 seasons, and enjoyed it all the time.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Greg?
As far as voices go, well, again, my background is comedy acting and character work, and so my ears always catch something out of the air wherever I'm at. So that's what I love doing, conventions and meeting people and just listening to people, go to movies, whatever. I wasn't going there for that intent, but sometimes that would happen. And it reminds me of, so my creative juices are always on alert. I was in the in an actual movie watching Lord of the Rings. You remember Lord of the Rings? And as I'm watching, they had Golem in there. So when there was a small part, something clicked in my ear, said, oh, that's an interesting voice. I wonder about the guy who created it. But right away, it hit me that watching Golem, I don't know if everybody here knows Golem from that movie. So watching it, it just clicked in my mind out of nowhere. To talk like this and say, oh, Gollum wants the precious, oh. And I would do that when there was no dialogue in the movie at a time, and then people were looking around thinking they're hearing things because I was in a seat by myself just being creative and playing with that voice, and it came up and that. And as I mentioned, for the Muppet Babies voices or whatever else I did, I either worked on it, like for Fozzie and Scooter, I had to think, okay, what would they be like little? Because just like Yoda, a lot of people do Yoda, you know, and all that. And it's the same guy that did Fozzie and Fozzie, at least. And so, you know, I had to give it my own creative spark to catch the ears of the people that they're entertaining. So that's more or less what it's about when I create and hear things.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. More so asking for myself than anyone else in here. At what point in your career did you realize that you could do voice full time and really make a career out of it?
Well, I was always a hybrid. I was doing regular cartoon series for the last 20 years, but I would also do film and TV mixed in along the way all the time too. So I was never full-time one or the other. You know, I've done a few My Little Pony conventions, and I've noticed some of the other performers would get kind of ticked off because people would recognize me from film and TV, but when you're strictly a voice actor, sometimes you're a bit anonymous. People don't really recognize who you are until they find out who you've done. And so people will come up to me and try to get a picture with me or an autograph or something like that. And the straight voice guys would get left out until they were able to show their stuff, and then everybody go, oh wow, that guy's that guy, So I was never a purist, a voice artist. I always mixed the two. It was probably 50-50 my whole career, the last 20 years anyway.
Thank you.
With me, I started doing voices and characters when I was in high school, more or less. Even before that, I was imitating relatives that I had. I was growing up in Ohio at the time, so there's a lot of ethnicity in that town. And so some of my relatives had an accent and things like that, and I would play around with it. My voice still didn't change at that time, but as it did change, I started still working with it like clay, saying, okay, the uncle would sound like this, and he always paused here or there, and so I studied him, and one day came into the house, sat in the back room, and then I did his voice, and my parents were like, I didn't know he was here, and I said, well, no, it was just me, and that led to things in school, where in high school we had substitute teachers. In one particular class, things seemed to luck out for me, I think, because I was placed in a class of 9th graders when I was in senior class because I didn't take biology throughout the schooling. So we had substitute teachers constantly because one teacher was apparently an alcoholic and had to miss a lot of school time. So they brought in substitute teachers. And one day they brought a guy in and he was like, okay, class, today we're going to do this, and this. Turn to page 4 and all this. And so I, being the class clown type, would raise my hand and say, well, I have a question. If we did this, can we do this too? And then the whole class would just start laughing. And I'd say, I'd just keep doing it. And the teacher never, of course, people who you're imitating don't usually know that that's what you're doing. But the whole group of kids were all into it, just saying, that's so funny. And eventually, as I say, things lead to another. I got to do the morning announcements in our school. And timing was proper because it was the only year that I attended this particular school. So nobody knew me, couldn't bully me or do whatever. And it led to doing the morning announcements. And I would do silly voices for the announcements. If it was the school sports, I'd go into a Howard Cosell kind of voice. He was big back then as a sports announcer. And I'd say, today North High is going to battle the one and only Warriors of South High. Be there tonight at 7. And so the kids are like listening like it was some real show. And I had a lot of fun just doing it because I was doing silly characters. For the cafeteria lunch program that day, I would do Julia Child, who was a famous cook, a chef back then in the 70s. And she was like this, and they're very Englishy. And I'd say, today, kids, we're going to have a fresh beaver face for lunch, followed by skunk paws. And every day I would do that. And so I had found out later that was the first time anybody listened to the announcements in the school without making noises. And I figured I was onto something. So from there, people said, oh, you do those voices, why don't you do them for TV and all that? I said, what do I do? They said, okay, go to where they need them. California was my first idea because animation was all coming from there. And so I came to California and started studying, and then people did pick me out as a voice they needed for whatever it was. But this is a little lesson for people getting into voices, or how people do start voices, in case they have an idea of doing this as well. These days, I think you could do it from wherever you're at until you get established, and you can then go to the big time people who produce these projects. But if we're talking voice here, that's kind of how it starts.
Yeah, thank you. I set up an IVR system for the internet company I work at, mainly to separate the technical and the billing phone calls. And it was very cheesy, announcy, like, thank you for calling Western Iowa Wireless. Please press 1 for billing. And, someone, they'd click the phone, and then I would answer, and I would say, Western Iowa Wireless, this is Dylan, how can I help you? And they can never put 2 and 2 together. And so that's always my, I always have to throw that in there and brag, and say, that's me, I'm the big voice of the phone system. Is there any jobs that you've done that maybe you don't get noticed for? You don't get the recognition that you feel like you should get?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, some you get, some voices live long and prosper. I know I did Sabretooth in Hulk versus Wolverine, and when they buy your rights out, they do it on a 5-year thing, and then after that, you don't, there's never a time when a cartoon is going to be airing past 5 years usually. But Hulk versus Wolverine stuck around for a long time after that, and what's interesting is some of these shows, like Transformers, for instance. I was in very deep company with other actors who have played Unicron. The late, great Orson Welles was the first person to voice Unicron. And those were huge shoes to fill. So that's sometimes where it's just understandable that you're going to be living in somebody else's shadow, because these things have generations, there's gens of different actors playing. There was an original Lord Tyrek before me, I like the fact that you can pass along the tradition and carry the torch. But I guess if there was one voice that, I got to play Fat Dog Mendoza for 26 episodes, and that was the starring character in the cartoon series. And it didn't get picked up again, and I understand I was huge in South Korea, but it didn't play a lot out here. But I enjoyed Fat Dog quite a bit. Fat Dog Mendoza. He was this great big orange dog who ate ham. I love ham. And that probably didn't get as much notice as I guess I wish it could have. But these things are all relative, and whenever you get a chance to do any of these characters, you're lucky. And that's the way I look at it. Lucky.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Oh, okay. Well, doing the different levels of voices, if you're doing something professionally through the Screen Actors Guild that you have to join to do union projects, they have to list you as part of the cast, and I think there's all kinds of exceptions if there's 100 people listed in a movie, because sometimes if there's 100 they can stop and not list anybody else. So since I do voice replacement for some of these movies, they don't say Greg Berg came in and did this guy's voice. But that's why I think many of you watching movies have heard me somewhere or another, or TV shows, commercials especially. I was a voice in the 1980s of a new character for Golden Graham cereal, which was supposed to be a honey drop that talked. They have the Honey Nut Cheerio character, which is a bee, and that's been around a long time. So they were trying this new character as a honey drop for Golden Graham Honey Graham cereals, and the character was basically going, part of this good, nutritious breakfast, made to stay crispy and crunchy in milk. And he would ride into the screen on a skateboard, and that would run a long time. People say, yeah, I've seen that. Sometimes they thought I was the bee, and I'd say, no, they tried with this honey drop. I was also the voice of Kiko Man in a commercial for Kiko Man teriyaki sauce, and that lasted about 4 years. But they don't tell you who was the voice. And some people are interested, and they'll dig deep online these days and say, oh, who did this voice of that? Just like you can do that for different products. Say, oh, I always wondered who did the voice for that cereal or candy commercial or something. I was also in a Butterfingers candy bar commercial, the voice telling you to buy Butterfinger candy bars. But those kind of things they don't give you credit for. But that's why I say you've heard me, but never knew it could have been me. And then again, voice replacements, which I get into.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of questions that I have, maybe one or two more, and then I'm going to turn it over to you folks out there. So start thinking, if you don't have questions yet, start thinking of some questions. The way the technology is today, I mean, versus what it was even 5-10 years ago. I mean, has that changed the voice acting much? Are you able to? I mean, Mark mentioned working in jeans is pretty cool. I mean, do you have home studios, or do you have a studio close by that you can utilize? Or, I mean, how has technology changed it? I mean, in recent years.
Well, everything has gotten extremely compact. You know, it doesn't take a load of equipment to do a fairly decent job. And there's great, you know, programs and things like that. But I'm semi-retired now. The last couple of things I've done were last year. I've got a feature coming out on Disney Plus in a couple of weeks, Peter Pan and Wendy, where I worked with Jude Law. And I did a short that's doing well in the film festivals called Never Broken. But I'm sort of sitting back and smelling the roses, so I don't do the home studio stuff much anymore. If a project comes up, you know, and they call me up, I'm never fully retired.
Greg?
For people interested in getting into voiceovers, depends. I've spoken with many people, beginners to advanced pros, and we're learning how the business has changed technology-wise. The latest change has been since the pandemic times, people are expected to have a home studio, which I'm not into absolutes, because also growing through the business, there were times everybody had to have a reel-to-reel demo of theirs, and then it went to cassettes, then it went to DATs, and it kept advancing into whatever the latest recording technology was. And I said, wait a minute, this is going too fast. So I never got a DAT. And sure enough, it switched to, now you got to have a CD. Now you have to have a digital demo. So the latest trend has been, for the last 3 or 4 years, having a home studio. That way you don't have to drive to where you're going and make arrangements with casting people and waiting with 30 people in line to be heard. I prefer doing interactive with somebody there handling the electronic part of things, recordings, as I provide the talent, so I can hear in my mind what is needed. I have to direct myself and all, but so that's the biggest change. If anybody's thinking of getting into it, if you can, and there are many setups that you can have. If you have a small place, there are many sets of equipment that you can still acquire that would do the job. But that's as far as changes go. Anything else? It's been a long run with entertainment, so I've been around some of the old timers from like the guy who did the original Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear cartoons. I grew up watching them, and they had a certain way that they had to perform and deliver, and I learned from them, and then I'm going with the flow these days. But even their days, it was a lot different. You used to gather in a group and do the shows, like old-time radio shows or something like that. And these days, Walt Disney does something where you just come in and you record your own character and have to use your acting talent and remember what the other talent is doing in interactive with your character. So that seems to be, that's been around a while. That's why it didn't sound like that was too new to do. But I've worked both. I've worked with 8 people in one room, and I've worked with just me, trying to imagine what the other person's saying, and then that's where the acting part comes in.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe what's a good warning of anyone wanting to get into voice acting? I know when I was in college for radio, I had a professor email everybody and say, like, if you can't handle these 5 things, then radio's not for you. And I mean, willing to relocate, being able to, live off of government assistance and have ramen noodles, and those are things that really make someone think, like, do I really want this? I mean, what are some things that I mean, it's not all sunshine and rainbows in voice acting, that maybe wouldn't be obvious to everyone?
Well, I like to look at the positive side more than the things to be aware of. Your natural instincts will kick in about what to fear and what to avoid. That is a given. You'll know instinctually, not to do this and not to do that. But if I can give anybody advice about anything, when it comes to performing anything, is that you got to find a way to have fun with it. If you're not having fun, you ain't doing it right. That's just as simple as it is. If you're having fun, usually the audience will have fun. That's a given rule when you do anything. So that would be my main piece of advice to give.
Thank you.
Well, I'm over the years, I've been doing this for 40 years now. When I first started, there were a lot of things that I had questions about as well. Well, I learned by taking step by step to what it is I wanted to know and where to go to learn it. So to begin in voiceovers, it takes, some people call it voiceovers for commercials, and it's voice acting when it comes to TV and cartoons and characters. You need to take acting workshops. And improv is a good part of it too, because anything can happen within the character that you're reading. They might have given you a character in one scene where something falls on you, and then you have to know what you would do if that happened. And that's all part of the acting process. It's all about reacting, so then you got to learn different ways how you would react and why. And so that comes from the acting classes. If you take improv, it also applies, because many cases something's not working in a scene of a project, and they'd say, okay, something's not going to fall on him. He's going to walk into a wall and bump into something. So that's a lot different than having something fall on you. So you got to learn, okay, what would I do if that happened? And how would I do it? And what else is going to happen with that? And that's all about the improvisation coming to you. But yeah, for people, that's the first item to tell people who are just learning about it. Everybody, I believe, that is doing this day and successfully had to do that, or else they found out that that's what they had to do. So it's learn acting, because it's voice acting, and learn some improv to go with it, because it wouldn't be as strict as hardcore acting. Even in acting, there have been scenes where somebody's supposed to get stabbed or shot and the gun's not working, and so the guy picks up something and hits the guy with it and says, "Now you're dead," or whatever. So you had to think really quick, and that's the kind of stuff improv helps you with. But that's for people beginning. See, I do talks on my own regarding success, and whether it's a success in business or life. I love working with people, telling them, what is it you want to do? This is how you do it, and follow this trail. So when it comes to the voice acting, yeah, that's the way to start, in my opinion.
Thank you. Questions out here? We can shout them out. You can raise your hand.
Well, I'm interested in them as well, as to what is it that they like in order to watch this seminar. What is it they like to? Is it about voiceovers, or just people who do cartoons, or people who are actors that are here? Be interested to hear. Just say why you were interested in hearing us today. What was the question?
Behind the scenes. He came here and he wants to know about behind the scenes. What drove you to do voiceover? And I think you touched on that a bit.
In my case, I did. One thing led to another. I mean, one day I woke up and I talked like this for a long time until somebody said, wait, somebody already talks like that. So then I had to find my own voice, and this is what I found. But behind the scenes stuff, it's preparation, and it's like anything, because some people are in awe of people who are stars in doing voiceovers or acting, and they say, oh, how do they do that? Oh, I can't do that, and all that. And again, being from teaching success techniques to people and helping them find their goals, it works the same for anybody, I say, because if you're wanting to be a dentist, you're going to go to school, learn how to be a dentist, then you got to go through different steps to say, okay, learn what you're going to have when you become a dentist, the equipment you need and all that, and then, oh, how am I going to get customers? And then you learn that technique. So that's why I feel I can relate with a lot of you guys that are here today, just watching us as voice people and actors, letting you know, look, you guys have dreams as well, and you should go for them without any hesitation. And one day you might be in a panel of, hey, I'm a lawyer and I'm the most successful lawyer out here, and why not be the most successful of whatever it is you're doing? And that's what I think we have here at the con today. A lot of professionals who put a lot of time into it, but there's no secret to how we did it. And that's why I encourage all of you to do something like that too. You humanize them, yeah.
Well, did you think we all talk like this as characters all day long?
Yeah. Well, with mine, I've been into so many situations, from the acting and on camera and voicing. There are so many. It's a psychological thing. I have to learn to adjust with. I mean, there's some, like, Robin Williams was an example of somebody who, the minute you just start talking to him, he's always got something to say. And in some cases, I've heard people say, would you just keep quiet? But he was programmed. He knew what to say, when to say it. And for talents and all that, to see what some of us are like. Because there are those talents that might have eventually did so much, they're into the ego and all that. And here, I don't think we have this ego thing going. We're just here to talk to people and meet them at these cons. Anybody have any? Are you here because of animation, or just shows that you were familiar with that you might have had an idea of wanting to hear something about? Because things that I have done, I try to relate with whoever's here to say, oh, you like that? Yeah, I remember working on this project or something, and this person was here. Or if you're interested in the celebrities out there, I remember going to L.A. and I told people, okay, I'm a professional actor now. And then I kept getting, have you ever met Burt Reynolds? Have you ever met Madonna and all that kind of thing? But I didn't get into it for doing that. I just did it to do what I do. And then occasionally you meet these people. And then you get to see the ones that might have that ego that I talked about. And it's like, please don't talk to me when I'm not acting. So that's, you're looking at a couple of people here that are really down to earth, and we're here to answer questions and explain a little bit of what we do.
I'm always surprised. There's a website called Voice Behind the Actor, which compares your voice to other actors that have performed that same character through the past. And they rate you. They vote on it and they rate you. And I wasn't aware of the history of some of the characters that I did until after I'd finished doing them. But I was always really surprised, about how in the writing and the depth of the character, the similarities persist. I mean, I was a very different Lord Tyrek. I didn't have the gravitas of Orson Welles in doing Unicron, but there was some real similarities. Just how do you pick it up after you've been left off for a while? They just put you on notice that you'd be showing up for another 2 or 3 episodes, whenever. Sometimes the time difference is so great that you have to listen to that sample again, the reference, to go, oh yeah, that's what I sounded like a year ago. Yeah, I remember that. But most of the time, in my experience anyway, you're in every episode of the series, or you're in 1 or 2 as a special sort of thing. That kind of way.
Thank you.
Well, if you're left off, yeah, because sometimes they'll tell you, okay, you're the regular in the series, or else we'll bring you back a couple times here or there. I just recently did a voice of a newscaster in a show coming up called White House Plumbers for HBO. It'll be out May 1st. I was the radio announcer, and it's an episodic show, so they told me I'll be there in the first episode and the 3rd episode. So I had to wait it out, and who knows if they might have cut it short and said, oh, we don't need the announcer in this show. And so as far as I know now, they said those were what we've recorded for, so I don't even know it'll be there, but that's kind of what happens. They just, sometimes they'll tell you you're signed on for this whole series. Sometimes too, if you have 3 different shows like some of the top voice guys are doing, they should be able to say, hey, we're going to need you for 6 months, so don't do anything else, but they can't really say don't take any other jobs. But yeah, behind the scenes, you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes a character will turn into something later that they want to bring back. I think they're doing like whatever that Warner Brothers project was, Tiny Toons or something like that, where they had Mad Max or Max, and they're bringing back the original guy who did it. And that was, whatever, 20 years ago or so. So they couldn't just say, wait for 20 years till we do another show. So yeah, you just never know. It's they book you and you put it in your schedule. Sometimes they'll call you up. They have to let you know in advance that they're not going to use you later. But it's just taking the job as the jobs are booked. Oh, okay. Well, that kind of ties in with talking about doing a voice, like Mark was saying. You do a voice, and then you get the job actually booked, and they're saying, do that voice. Well, in our cases, we would, in my case, I know I did at least 50 other auditions between the time I did the Igor voice audition, which was in December. They called me in at the agency I was with, and said, okay, this is, the character is Igor, and the typical things that you have to learn when you're going to audition is the character, what do they do? In my case, I even like to add, okay, Igor was this little mechanical, almost like the puppy of one of the main Transformers. And so it's kind of wild, and it wasn't going to overbear the main character. So I had to figure out what would that type of character be like. And so I did the voice. There was a lot of grumbling. Somebody told me I had a lot more lines than that, but I forget what the rest were. I just remember the character. And and mumbling like that, but it was the pet of the Transformer. So, and then in the scene of Transformers Dark of the Moon, #3, they blow up or destroy the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., where it takes place, and Igor is rolling Lincoln's head down the street like a dog toy. So you got to figure all that, and if you do it right, maybe it amuses the director, or he might say, that sounds too funny, so do something really dark with it. And we get the direction then to do the initial audition. So I auditioned for that in December. Then I get a call in April saying, okay, they want you in to do that voice that you did for Igor. And I know there was a lot of people tried out for it. And when I went for the actual recording of the day that they're going to insert it for their film, I said, I don't remember doing this as to what I did that particular day in December, because of all the other characters I have running around in my head. So they played it back for me because that's what they chose from. And then I redid it as best I could from that. And they even said, well, did you remember doing this? And I said, I remember getting the call for it. And so they played it back for me, and because I didn't want to lose it by saying, well, I don't remember doing that, and then they would have got somebody else probably, or they'd work with me and say, do that crazy voice. So I did it, and then the movie came out. So as far as relating to Transformers and the voice of Igor, that's how that one worked. In other cases, you record it, and then maybe a week later, they'll say, okay, we're recording now, come in and do what you did last week. So yeah, time factor was involved in that one. And you just work with it as professionally as you can. And I'm honest about it. I'd say, I don't remember doing that, but there was a reason why, and they understood, so they did it. But if some other place comes in and says, do that voice you did, and maybe they hurt their throat doing an imitation of something, they'd say, I can't do that anymore. And then they'd have to get somebody else.
Thank you. Mark and Greg, any other thing, anything you guys want to close with?
Well, I wanted to get across to people that yes, I did follow my dreams into what they turned into, which I'm extremely surprised and happy about. But it took a lot of work to put into it. But that's what I wanted, and so I was willing to do whatever work it took to do it. So I want the people here listening to know that they can do that with whatever they want. I mean, mine was like a one shot in 100,000 people that, 10,000 people a day or something like that come to LA or a week to try to get into show business. Well, I said, yeah, I want to be in show business, but what is it that I exactly want to do? And that's kind of what I talk about when I give seminars on going for your goals. And I want everybody else to be able to go for their goals, so I'm telling them how to do it.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say that the only reason why we're up here is because people like you enjoy our work, and we owe everything to you guys. And we wouldn't have careers if it wasn't for people that were fans and liked listening and watching our work. And I'm truly appreciative of that. That's why I do these conventions, is to make myself open and available to you guys, because I truly appreciate what you've done for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Out in the seats, thank you for coming by. Make sure to stop by. Mark Atchison and Greg Berg both have tables over there, and they have some cool stuff that you can purchase as well.
I mentioned online I have scripts from Ninja Turtles and Muppet Babies that I could sign for those real diehard collectors. Some are out there that have badges and photos and items from movies that they acquired somewhere online. So, but nobody's really kept their scripts and signed them for people who are interested in what an animation script looks like in case they're getting into writing and they'd see an actual used script. And this will be autographed by one of the turtles from there.
All right, put your paws and your claws together for Mark Atchison and Greg Berg. Thanks for coming.
Synergy Nation Network Podcast. Shows for those with passion. Visit us online at sidnation.net.